Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews. Let's get into the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews, the show where we talk to experts and really cool people that are that really just want to build a better future, more sustainable, less,
Better
less,
world, for
less
sure.
cruelty, like no harming of animals. We're trying to have a green life in the future. So that's what this show's about doing that.
For sure.
My name is Deji Bankole, one of the hosts.
And I'm Akindele Bankole, another host.
All right, so today we've got a special guest on. His name is Andrew Alexander. He is a vegan advocate. He is a film producer. He is a founder and CEO of Vegan Health Pack, and he's just an overall cool guy. So we'll have him come on and teach us a few things about even just a lot of stuff, the film industry, even maybe, he's got a, this is gonna be kind of good one. This is gonna be a fun one. I've got a background in film, and so, we won't nerd out too much about that. We'll keep it,
Yeah, exactly.
on subject, but, yeah. All right, here we go. Let's bring him in. All right, Andrew, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So for the people who don't know who you are, do you mind just giving, your elevator pitch of who you are and what you're all about?
Absolutely. So I am producing a documentary called Creating a Vegan World, where I go behind the scenes of the vegan plant-based health and environmentalist movements to really create a blueprint for how we could make the world vegan faster. And for other social justice movements, we could learn from the vegan movement to make positive changes in the world.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, that for sure was an elevator pitch. I
Yeah.
can see how polished it is. Can you give us a little bit of background about you as an individual too?
Yeah, so pretty much most of my life I went to school, I studied political science. I wanted to go the 9 to 5 route. Then 2012, I just graduated university and couldn't get a job for the life of me in the field I wanted. Then I read a book on internet entrepreneurship where I saw all these people making lots of money on the internet, traveling, having expensive cars, mansions, and just like living the dream life. So 2012, I drove to Phoenix, Arizona to learn from some internet millionaires. I learned how to build an internet business. I built an iPhone app business where I didn't make $1 million, but I made enough to quit the corporate world. I traveled, lived out most of my personal, I guess, selfish desires of traveling, having fun. Then, right around 2017, I went vegan and I just kind of hit a point in my life where I wanted to do something else besides just strictly make money or my own type of thing. So, my entrepreneur drive, going vegan, I joined a vegan startup as their number two to help sell ready to eat vegan meals on the internet. Did that for a couple years. And then I just want to go back and do something on my own by myself. So,
Mm.
in early 2020, that's when I started doing about 100 pre-interviews for the documentary, learned really interesting things that people could learn and just took it from there.
It's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Awesome.
So I guess what prompted you to say, I actually want to make a documentary, uh, you know,
So
yourself,
I think it's mainly because what the world needed and what the world wanted. Because
Mhm.
after I decided to go on my own, I started a vegan subscription box where I was telling people about it. They're saying, okay, this is a good way to get healthy vegan foods, but the cost wasn't right. People weren't that excited. Then one day in a
Mm.
Sydney, Australia vegans Facebook group, I made up a Photoshop movie poster saying creating a vegan world documentary. If I film this, would anyone be interested in this movie poster or this one or this one?
Mm.
Hundreds of people responded where I got like 200 comments on there. People messaged me saying they want their music in there, they want to be interviewed, they want to help out. And of anything I've ever done in my life, it's the most positive feedback. And it was in that moment where I knew this is something that the world needed. And I
Mm.
didn't even talk about the content of the film. I didn't even know it at that point yet. So just knowing that people were excited for this, that is like my motivation to keep going forward. And when I faced a lot of struggles along the way, I just knew that's the motivation that pushed me through.
That's really
It's
interesting.
awesome.
the idea that you're starting, I have a background in film as well, and I have another podcast, and on our podcast, we talked to a distribution sales agent, and one of the things that they talked about was that a lot of filmmakers don't like think about where it's going at the end and who's going to buy it. And it's interesting your approach of you're in the vegan community already, so that you knew the people, right? You're this is part of your community, and you put out the poster and you said, do you care
Mm,
if I were to do this, do you care? And I think it's very important to go where the audience already is, go where the desire and the need already is. And I think that's it's like refreshing to see somebody going that way and seeing, okay, well, this is the market, this is where there's a gap, this is where I can fill the gap, and then they do it and they execute. So it's awesome that you did that.
Yeah, I think the really interesting part is I didn't come from a film background. It's not like I wanted to make a documentary. I just put the idea out there and then kind of picked it up when it was presented to me. And I think one of the reasons I'm going to the vegan community is because all the other vegan documentaries, so like Cowspiracy, Seaspiracy, What the Health, they speak to non-vegans about why you should go vegan. And the
I
more
see.
I interact with the vegan movement and leaders who are doing really unique things that are having a tremendous impact, it's really bringing that message to existing vegans. So
Mm,
this way, people who are not vegans could be inspired to be activists or change makers. Maybe they start a podcast, they become a vegan chef or whatever it is, and existing activists to do things a lot more effective. So yeah,
Mhm.
going to the community and just it's been the most supportive part of the whole process.
it's awesome.
Yeah. There's the message and the direction that I've seen that your film appears to be going is very interesting, because it seemed like you just said, like the movie is for people who are already vegans and figuring out what they can do to actually make change, as opposed to like changing their diets, which is what I think a lot of the vegan documentaries are about, is like, okay, well, how do you change your diet? Like, this is we're exposing you to the world of factory farming, and isn't this bad, and people are like, wow, that's terrible, I don't want to eat that, and then they change their diet. But it seems as though like what you're doing is you're saying, hey, well, how do you make actual change? How do you change the laws around certain things that are in the world, and make a real lasting long lasting change? So that's very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a few examples I could give to like demonstrate that. So one of them is like the social dynamics aspect of things. So I interviewed a vegan doctor. He's a registered dietitian, used to work one-on-one with patients, but now he strictly works with corporate settings. So for example, let's say you work as a vegan nutritionist one-on-one. They go home, their family is not vegan, their friends at work are not vegan, their social circle is not vegan. If you're that one person trying to go vegan in a community of 100 non-vegans, it's very difficult. But if
Hmm.
he goes to a corporate setting and works with 20 individuals in the same room, this way you go back to work and let's say 19 of your coworkers are trying to eat whole food plant-based. This way, the social dynamics, you're surrounding yourself with a community of people, and subconsciously, you want to be part of that community. So, by bringing those social dynamics into it, that's one way to use leverage to make the change a lot faster than one on one outreach alone. A few other examples, one of them is there's a man in the UK who turned ethical veganism into a protected class. So, he got fired from his job because I don't know the exact details, but it's, I guess, the retirement funds were going to a non vegan cause, and he refused that. He got fired, he won the lawsuit, and without changing laws and without passing new legislation, the case ruling on that turned ethical veganism into a protected class like religion. So, for example, if you have a kid who goes to grade school and you request a vegan meal, they're legally required to give it to you. Prisons, hospitals, different places like that. So, there's other examples where in the health community, if somebody dies of a heart attack and they were never prescribed a whole food plant based diet, despite it being in the books for about 30 years, if the I guess the widow sues the health community or the doctor, that could potentially cause a ripple effect in the same way. And one more example is how to leverage the financial system, where we say capitalism's against small social justice movements. I interviewed a man. He said, as vegans, we have more than $3 trillion in our global stock accounts. and using new equity crowdfunding laws, non-wealthy people could invest in early stage businesses. So all of a sudden, we have more than $1 trillion from non-accredited investors that could go into the vegan economy. So instead of fighting against the systems, it's how we could use leverage to be more effective. So a lot of the film focuses around that in my interviews and the content I put out. So that's why I'm like super excited, because I used to think veganism or activism was holding signs on the streets or posting on social media. And I learned strategies from all different areas of society where we could be much more effective.
Wow, that's really awesome, actually.
Totally.
That's really great. Yeah.
Such an interesting approach to the same problem that we've heard about. For I mean, we're in it. We're in this problem, but like you're not working against the grain here. So this is great.
Exactly. People don't want to change. They're accustomed to the systems. And if we could find a way to use it, then I think it's going to be a lot easier going forward if more people take this approach.
Wow.
It's really enlightening too. And I think also, I think I agree with so many people that there are different ways to approach talking about veganism or promoting it. Some people need really hardline information, to get them moving. Some people just need just a little bit of a helping hand into the community. And some people need data and some information, and being able to actually see from a more foundational point of view that we need to actually work with lawmakers, because I know in some of your videos you talked about or at least had this discussion about working with lobbyists, for example, to help make sure that lawmakers know what we need, and also working with government officials regarding subsidies, for example, because we know a lot of the meat industry gets subsidies, and so if we can shift some of that into the vegan world, it might also help some of the costs that people complain about a lot, when it comes to veganism. So, yeah, it's really fantastic what you're doing here.
Definitely. And of course, things always seem easier on paper. And like when you mentioned subsidies, it's like we're fighting against
Totally.
millions of dollars going to the government officials. And
Absolutely.
the one interview you quoted, I think, was Agriculture Fairness Alliance.
Yeah.
I forget the exact numbers, but I think the USDA recommends like 80% fiber rich foods for your diet. Yet subsidies only go what, like 18% or 2%. So
Totally.
even though the government says one thing, the money goes somewhere else. So yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is often said that the vegan movement is sort of elitist, and not accessible to low-income folks. And how do you respond to this criticism, and what can be done to make it more accessible to more people?
So I guess there's two sides that I haven't seen the entire world yet. So I'm not sure about very different parts of the world, but from my experience, that is the case I noticed in Australia, where the vegan burgers are more expensive. The vegan cheeses, the vegan ice cream, you're paying $10 instead of 5. So in those instances, with the processed vegan foods, of course, but subsidies will help with that. But after Australia, I traveled through Indonesia, where there's the Western vegan restaurants, which are expensive. But then I went out to the villages where there's this one woman I met where her family was cooking a meal. I filmed that. And she said 6 days out of the week, she eats rice, vegetables, and tempeh.
Ah,
100% vegan 6 days a week, because beef, chicken, and other foods like that are more expensive. So the further one out of the side of the cities, it's actually the opposite, where the grains are more available there, and it's actually more affordable to be vegan when you follow more, I guess, whole food plant based. And I
right.
interviewed a man named Driando. He's the founder of the Indonesian tempeh movement, and you could make tempeh from, I think he said, pretty much any type of bean or thing possible. So whether you're in the middle of Africa, you're in remote parts of Japan, you're in Germany, you could turn like black beans, chickpeas, even spaghetti, things into tempeh. And this is a way to provide nutrient rich plant based protein. In, I think he said it's 8 times more affordable than commercialized beef. So
Wow.
like I said, I haven't been to every part of the world. I'm sure there are exceptions, but when you go more towards the natural foods, the whole food plant based, and different parts outside the major cities that I saw in Indonesia, it's actually a lot cheaper. And most people in certain areas are vegan by default because they can't afford anything more expensive.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's very interesting. You know, I'm sure that you've heard about the like the blue zone studies and like, and it just sort of makes sense. For those people who don't know, there are blue zones, like 6 or 8 blue zones or something in the world where people live the longest. And one of the factors that plays, besides having community and doing exercise, like constant exercise, either walking or working in the garden or whatever, it's having a mostly plant-based diet or a fully plant-based diet. And it's interesting because I feel like that coincides with what you're talking about. A lot of these places are like, parts in Japan. I mean, there is one in Loma Linda, right? And like in Italy and all that stuff where, you know, people are, they're not in like commercial, city hubs with like, access to tons of like different types of foods or whatever. They're in the outskirts of town, like in a small or a smaller town, and where the meat is probably more expensive, and so they just opt for the things that are less expensive for longer. So that's very interesting that kind of all coincides with that. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Um, so how, there's a lot of questions here. So,
I know,
how
yeah.
do
Same
you
here.
like? What advice would you give to somebody who is sort of interested in promoting a plant-based uh, agricultural and welfare, but like doesn't know where to start?
So it's funny because I'm just editing the closing scene of my documentary, and this is what I've been editing for the last 5 days. So there's two things to it. Number one is there's a different form of activism for everybody. So a lot of people think holding signs on the streets, you have to be a famous plant-based doctor. You have to go through, I know, research how to develop the best plant-based foods, but everybody has a skill set. So in the closing scene of my film, I'm working to get somebody who sings a song about veganism and it actually sounds really amazing. To if you're a singer, you could sing. If you write, you could do that. If you make posts on social media, I interviewed someone from Australia named Stefania Model is her Instagram name. And she built up 1 million followers in the fashion industry. She's a fashion model. So she built up 1 million followers, and every once in a while she makes a post about animal rights. And that gets the message through the social media algorithms to people who wouldn't hear
Mhm.
it. So even if it's not posting something vegan all the time, if you have an interest in mountain biking or gardening or even video games, whatever it is, building a following and doing that'll help. The other side of that is you don't know who you're going to impact. So one of the reasons I went vegan is I was trying to go plant based for a while. Then one person posted a fundraiser for a sheep to get medical bills paid from a animal sanctuary,
Mm.
and that post just somehow hit me, and that's the thing that went vegan. So if you're looking through the lens of the person who posted that on Facebook, she's like, "Oh, I'll just post my fundraiser for the sheep's medical bills on Facebook today." She had no clue that would lead me to being a co-founder for a company that served more than 30,000 plant-based meals. Now I'm promoting a documentary and dedicating
That's
my
awesome.
professional career to promoting veganism. So whatever it is, like that one little thing, even if you don't impact 1 million people, even if you don't become famous or influential, you might have an impact on one person who goes and makes the next vegan company that ships millions of people. So
That's
my
awesome.
advice is do something small. And if you want to do something bigger, find something you're already interested in, start maybe an online following about it and do it.
Nice.
Wow, that's very nice. I like
Okay.
that. Um,
I also I saw an interview that you had with I believe I think let's say Stanescu.
We're talking about he's against
Yeah,
the lab grown meat industry.
right. And so
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about that. What was your take on that, and has there been any more information from his side in terms of you know what we do when it comes to lab grown meat, and should we what should the immediate solution be to this concern that he posed, in terms of having some substitute, and then where will the future of that be for us as vegans?
Definitely. So all the details about what goes into lab grown meat, I'm not the expert of this, but just based on my experience, I could talk about the good sides I saw from it, as well as the obstacles to overcome. So on the good side, it's really difficult to change human behavior. So I know most of my life when I try to start a healthy diet, I last 3 days and I fall off of it. Even as a vegan, I try to eat whole foods, plant-based. I keep going back to the vegan junk food. I've been vegan for 5 years, so I stick with that because of the ethical reasons. But when it comes to giving people exactly what they're accustomed to eating without the the antibiotics that lead to maybe antibacterial resistance, all those things, I see that as a way to give people exactly what they're buying anyway without the animal slaughter. But on the downside of that is during that interview, he's bringing up objections and obstacles where they test on animals. I think the companies I interviewed in Singapore, they phased out the bovine fetal serum.
Right.
The exact name of it. So they phased out of that, but they still have to take like a small tissue sample. Um, so they're working on ways to get rid of that. And of course, there's the energy use, where if you have to grow the meat in a fermenter and like grow it really big,
Right.
then I'm sure there's a lot of energy use. Um, the way I'll conclude that part is there's a lot of this industry is moving forward. They're getting hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. So if you have
Wow.
ethical concerns against it, be part of the solution, find a way to remove animals from the system completely. If there's more efficient bioreactors that you could create or things like that, work towards it. So there is the side where this might be the thing that gets people to finally do it, but there's still problems. And on the same topic, I filmed that industry when I was in Singapore. So I might go a slightly different direction with this answer, but Singapore, they have 1% of their land dedicated towards agriculture because it's a small island nation. They don't
Right.
have vast fields like Indonesia or the United States or Australia. So they get about 90% of their foods imported overseas from 176 different countries.
Wow.
And so Singapore government has an initiative called the 30 by 30 initiative. So by 2030, they want 30% of their food to be made domestically and locally. So there's vertical farming where you could grow, I guess, vegetables indoors, like in skyscrapers or in like little like stacks there, as opposed to
Right.
horizontally.
Mm.
And the government is supporting the lab grown meat industry. They're supporting the vertical farming industry. So these are, I guess, going back to the government example, that's a way to find a government initiative to kind of work with them instead of against them.
Mm.
Right.
But with lab grown meat, yeah, I don't have a personal opinion. I have to do more research to see what the effects are for ethical reasons and
Mm.
environmental reasons. But from human behavior standpoint, like people are hard to change, and that's the one good side of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I was quite concerned and also confused at the same time, because on the one hand we know, okay, we're trying to figure out a solution here, and then of course, like many things, then you find the downside could be in this way. But I thought it was a good interview because I think you really had a very nice, a balanced stance about it, and it's very difficult to judge situations because we're not right there in it in the lab while they're doing it. But hopefully, there'll be some solution that'll move us forward, because yeah, it's hard figuring out veganism, the foundations of this and why we're being vegans, and then when we see issues of concern, how do we move from that issue into a better solution? So hopefully, there'll be a better solution for this
Absolutely.
in future.
I think that's the
For
biggest thing
sure.
with all this, where we want to create solutions. If we see a problem, we could complain
Totally.
about it or we could do something to solve it. So
Absolutely.
I always lean towards the latter, just maybe my years of personal development kicking in.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
I kind
Excellent.
of want to dig in a little bit more on sort of what steps you feel like governments and corporations should take to sort of accelerate the transition to, a plant-based economy.
Great question. One of my first interviews was with Emma Hurst. She's a member of parliament in Sydney, Australia, in the state
Mm.
government. And she said, first, there's individual change, and that creates demand for products. And then corporations will cater to consumer demand, it's just the way businesses work. And then once enough corporations make changes, that's when governments will start to take notice. So there's different approaches where if we continue to focus on individual change, there's something I learned. It's called pressure campaigns. You might have heard of them, where in Sydney, Australia, there's the Nike kangaroo leather protest. They used to use kangaroo leather in their shoes, and there's a huge campaign by activists that was pressuring Nike to stop using kangaroo leather in their shoes. And a couple weeks ago or last month, they made an announcement saying they're going to phase out of that. So that came from the individuals pressuring the company to make the change. So pressure campaigning, I'll look more into it. If anyone listening, if you're interested, where if we want to make the world vegan or plant-based, there's so many things going on, but they focused on one specific issue, got a small group of people and made that change. So one idea I
Nice.
kind of want to see is, one thing I hate is when there's those labels in the supermarkets where it's 99.9% not or vegan, then it's like a sprinkle of milk powder. So what if we come together and just all write that company and say, why don't, hey, you're turning off vegans to your products. There's what, 70 million vegans in the world or something like that. Why don't you just remove this one ingredient, make it vegan friendly, expand your consumer base? And when more corporations do that, governments will start to take notice. Then I was interviewing Emma. She's part of the Animal Justice Party. So in Australia, they fight on specific issues. Can't quote for them. I believe it's banning live export of sheep, domestic animals, giving them protection. So there's opportunities even at the local level. If you go into your local government, there might be protections for your cats and dogs and everything, all the way up to the national level where you could help shift subsidies. So fund a lobbying organization, become a lobbyist, run for local council, whatever it is, or just support people who stand for the right stances.
Nice.
Nice. Wow.
Your like the previous things that you've done in the past have been like sort of mixing food, like plant-based food, and or being plant-based or being vegan, and technology. So how do you sort of see technology, which is, I mean, it's changing so quickly, right? But how do you see technology really influencing and changing, you know, the world, and how we can become more plant-based?
What type of technology do you see, like innovation of products, using e-commerce to get things out there, or is this going to be a
The
chat
whole
GPT conversation?
I mean, we can talk about ChatGPT too, but the whole gamut, like what do you, or you, let's say, like, what do you feel like would be the most effective at the moment? Because we don't, tomorrow there could be a new type of ChatGPT we've never even heard of before that is now the most powerful thing that it's in the world, right? But for what we have right now, what do you feel like is going to push everything forward a little bit more in terms of like how we can grow?
Definitely. I think this is the one question I'm really trying to think the answer for. It might go back to the using social media to spread the message in different areas.
Hmm.
So my personal experience, my Vegan World Film Instagram account, I start off by making posts speaking about animal rights, things like that. And I noticed the comments on my posts are from people who are already vegan. They're already my activist friends, kind of like propping ourselves up. But if we use social media and build those different audience in different areas, I think getting the message out there and speaking to people from a perspective of something they're already interested in or something they could relate to, I think that's really important. Um, Before the documentary, I was with Veg Ready, where we serve the ready to eat vegan meals. So
Hmm.
in the past, we had to be in, I guess, I don't know, 100 years ago, you had to open up a store, maybe sell your food there. But we delivered all across the United States from a centralized location. We sold direct to consumer online, and we have the ability to distribute food so much better than ever before. So, yeah, e-commerce will definitely play a role in that based on the experience I've seen. And then, yeah, I think, yeah, with ChatGPT, if we want to just talk about that briefly, like I downloaded, I'm not an expert at it, but like when I'm trying to do the opening scene for my film,
Mm.
I want to make sure I deliver it in the most, I guess, engaging way possible. And I had all these different ideas and I started typing for a couple hours. And then that like one little burst of insight hit me. So maybe that one little thing might be the emotional grabbing hook point that makes the
Mm.
documentary more appealing than it would have been otherwise. So there's different ways we could use it.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. There's so many different applications and use cases to make things like I mean, I think, I feel like a lot of people, especially now, like are, and for good reason, are afraid of technology and how fast it's moving. But I feel like, technology is akin to a stick in the caveman days. The stick isn't going to go anywhere unless you use it, but you can also use it for different cases. You can use it to, like, hit the berries off the tree and they fall on the ground, and that's nice. But you can also use a stick to hit your neighbor on the head, right? And that's not as nice. Um, so definitely, technology is how you use how you use it is like what the scary part could be. But I think if we're having some regulations around that, that'd be nice. So
Nice.
um, so do you mind? So you started a Kickstarter for your movie. Um, how did that go? Do you mind just kind of walking us through that process?
Sure. So right now we're recording this. It's May 2023. I think I launched it early February 2022 last year.
Mhm.
It was a very intense month because with Kickstarter, for people not familiar, I post the idea for the documentary. I needed professional camera gear. So I set the goal for $10,000. If I didn't hit the goal, then I would have got nothing. So if I raised 6,000 and the timer goes down, then absolutely nothing. So what really helped me is I've done about 70 pre-interviews before the documentary. So recorded Zoom calls like this, learning from a lot of influential people. I was very active on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, just connected with as many people as possible. And then I think that was the real, I guess, thing that helped me out because it's really
Mhm.
about the people that you connect yourself with. And I launched it. I approached everyone in my network and just reached out asking for everything I needed. And I think it was within the last day I finally hit the goal there.
Wow.
I raised
Wow.
the really funny story is there's a man connected to probably a bunch of the other vegan documentaries where during the middle of the Kickstarter campaign it sounded like he was going to put $5,000 in because that's what I needed to get over the finish line. He was not available until the day before the Kickstarter campaign ended. So we had a scheduled Zoom call and I knew to myself that okay, at the end of this call I'm just very confident I'm going to get the $5,000. It'll get the campaign funded, everything. And as soon as the call started, it looked like it was going downhill. He said, the reason these other Kickstarters for these other documentaries are successful because they already had the camera gear, they're further along in production. I was like, this isn't going the right direction. So towards the end of the goal, I was like, listen, like I'm dedicated to this. I'm gonna finish this project no matter what. The documentary will be finished. It's a matter of do I do it now or will it happen 2 years in the future? So
Mhm.
anything you could do could support me. He put in a not the full amount, but enough to get me closer to the finish line where my last day push actually got me there. But the interesting thing is, as soon as the call ended, I was a little bit like, well, very stressed out about what's going to happen next. I got an email for a private philanthropist. He offered a grant for $5,000, and I read that email as soon as I got off the call. So
Wow.
that didn't hit my Kickstarter, but yeah, I got my
Wow.
two camera gear, my two professional cameras, microphone, lighting, audio equipment, everything there, and
Wow.
that was really good
That's
there. And right
amazing.
now, what I'm learning is there's more funding necessary to complete production. So
Yeah.
right now, I'm
Awesome.
back in fundraising mode just to put the finishing touches on the movie this year.
Nice. And are you doing everything yourself, basically, like editing and all that stuff too, or?
So up until February, I surrounded myself with advisors. So people who produced
Mhm.
documentaries before, they consulted me on what camera gear to get, how to do the storyline, how to do the editing. There's people that could help with color correction, background music, scoring,
Mhm.
all that stuff. So surrounding myself with the right people, but mostly doing it myself.
Mhm.
Then in February, I went to Indonesia, and one of my friends, Sarah, she came from the United States. We were traveling there together, and she was helping me out. And she's officially part of the documentary now, where she's helping me with fundraising, with editing, giving me feedback, writing the storyline, scheduling interviews. So it's so much easier having someone else help you with everything, as I'm sure you two experienced here with the podcast.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
Yep.
it's night
Yep.
and day sometimes,
It definitely is. And of course in our case, just really having somebody in the background that can actually make all the connections and do all
Mhm.
the set up all the scheduling and stuff is so important for us.
Shout out to Sam.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Sam,
Yeah,
our
she's
producer.
amazing. Yeah, totally.
Amazing. And it's good to
Um,
have different skill sets, like
Yeah.
where I'm more of the creative, like get everything out there. Sarah's more organized and to the T, where I'm like, oh, let me jump to editing this section of the film. She's like, no, you have to fix this scene right here. And she's very
Yes.
organized. We use Asana, which is our project management software, to make sure everything moves forward. And my personality trait is like, get all creative, go in there, forget about it a week, and it's gone. Where she's in there every single day. So I guess my skill sets complement her skill sets and my weaknesses, and everything balances out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I definitely have that. Being able to recognize my own weaknesses and know I cannot do that. Even though, yes, I mean, I can if I put my effort in one day, but to do that day in, day out, it'll become extremely painful. So I just know that, having somebody like Sam there who is behind us and helping this happen is so important.
Amazing.
So important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you sort of hope to achieve with the documentary, Creating a Vegan World?
So I think what I mentioned before is we all have our unique path that we go. And my problem in the past was focusing on one thing and moving forward to make it really big. So like I said, I want to do the subscription box. I wanted to do the documentary. I want to do this, and just it lost so much focus. So through all these interviews, I just really found out what I resonated with best. So when I built my first internet business, I helped other first-time entrepreneurs build the confidence to get started, to find the right idea to focus on, how to be motivated and start making progress towards their goals. And now, since I've been vegan, focusing on, I guess, helping people start vegan initiatives. So there's basically the documentary where I want to inspire more vegans to do something. So the more people we have and the more people we have doing the correct things, that's how we take the vegan movement from this all the way to exponential growth and create a vegan world faster. So number one is put out the documentary, continue to do the interviews like you've seen on my YouTube channel, outside of the film, just to take the best practices of making positive change, whether it's veganism, plant-based health, the environment, and distributing that information. So maybe someone from Brazil is doing something amazing that could apply to somebody who listens in India. So there's putting the documentary out there, inspiring more people, putting these interviews out for more information, writing a book based on the experience. And what I realized is like when we come together as a collective, that's when we're so much more powerful. So one of the ideas I had was similar like a Kickstarter campaign, which helped me out. One of my friends, she was running a vegan t-shirt printing business, that it's a wearable activism movement where you could wear different designs, you could have a conversation in a supermarket standing online. So instead of activists standing in one city street, she could have thousands of people in one city have the wearable activism go around and have a bigger impact. So through one of my donors, she raised about $5,000 so far to help her there. My friends who started another initiative, they raised a couple $1,000s as well. So one idea I have in my mind is, what if I create a platform similar like Kickstarter I had, but for veganism? So if somebody has an idea for a new vegan initiative or they need something for an activism campaign, what if we come together, build a community around it, and then help fund the vegan initiatives and provide them the guidance they need? Because one individual could impact thousands. And so I don't know, it's an idea in my mind right now. I'm starting to get the groundwork on that, but I think after documentary, that's what my focus will be, and helping people narrow in on their focus.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems like your through line, or your, thesis or theme, if you will, is to like help to empower other people to be more successful.
Absolutely, because it's the people that really make the change. The animals can't speak for themselves, and it's people that
Correct.
got me to the point I am today to where you are. And the more of us there are, the better.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I like that. I like that. Um, okay, so we're getting to the end of our interview here, unfortunately. Um, so our last questions are sort of, what advice would you give to, it could be, I guess, sort of anybody really who maybe is already vegan and you know wants to know what they can do to, you've actually kind of talked about this a lot in this interview, but if you were to boil it down to like sort of one thing, like what would you say?
I think the most important thing anyone could do as a first step to bridge the gap from just being vegan to being activist and being part of the solution is to maybe share your story on social media. So what impacted you to go vegan? What impacted you to go plant-based, whether it's for health or environmental reasons? People connect with emotions, they connect with stories, they connect with people like them. So if I tell my story about starting the documentary, maybe I'll inspire another filmmaker to make a documentary about something else, helping a specific type of animal. So if you share your story on social media, that could really impact and hit the hearts of people, and you never know who you're going to reach. So it's probably a lot easier to do that than stand on the street in the cold winter holding signs, getting shouted at, having kids throw KFC chicken bones at you, which I've seen. A lot of people are turned off by the idea of going out there and doing street activism. So this is probably a better solution to get started, and then taking it from there. Just find out what you're really passionate about and incorporate your message into that.
Nice.
Awesome. So what are you working on at the moment?
Right now, I'm editing the closing scene of the documentary, and I'm applying for grants and fundraising to fund the next leg of the journey. So, yeah, fundraising this, planning to go to Lebanon. There's the first all vegan hospital in Beirut, Lebanon. I spoke with the founder of it on Zoom. So, we want to create a blueprint so other hospitals could transition and work plant-based foods into their hospitals. And he's the first one that did it. And it's really cool to learn from people who did that and share the message.
Wow. So, what
awesome.
is the next? Sorry, this is not a part of the three questions, but what is the the next leg of the journey for the film? What do you have to do next? Are you going to like festivals or something, or?
So right now I filmed in Australia, I filmed in Asia, and I want to hit at least one interview on every continent. So in Peru, there's people that are working with the food shelters. There's probably 3,000 food shelters that give meals to people in need. They're
Mhm.
educating those, turning them plant-based. So there's South America. There's interviews I have to refilm in United Kingdom, Toronto, and then Lebanon, and then somewhere in Africa. I have to figure out where to film there. So I want to film one interview on each continent, and then, like you said, film festivals, speak to people who've got their documentary on Netflix or Disney Plus, and get in touch with the right distributors to have people actually see it.
Awesome. Okay. And then where can people find you?
So on Instagram, we're Vegan World Film. If you search on YouTube, the channel's name is Creating a Vegan World. And then my personal name is Andrew Alexander. I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm active there. So either one of those three places.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us on this interview. It's been really, really great, actually. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's just such a delight to know that you're really out there. You're helping create a vegan world, and I like that concept. I like that idea. I know you've had a dialogue also with Stephanie Red Cross West as well. And she also has a similar idea about really building a vegan community. And I'm just really excited that we're part of that journey with you as well. It's great.
Thank you so much. It's been great connecting with you as well.
yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll talk to you. Maybe we can have you on again after the film is released or something. That'd be kind of cool.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Green Carpet Interviews. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. This show was brought to you by Veg on the Edge, our vegan restaurant in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo. If you're in the area, be sure to stop by and check out our delicious plant-based dishes. Check out vegontheedge.com for more information. To stay connected with us and learn more about conscious living, follow us on Instagram at Green Carpet Interviews. We love hearing from our listeners and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Green Carpet Interviews.